Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 136, and for today's episode, I decided to come back and basically take something that originally started out as a one-off and make it into a three-part series. In the very beginning of my channel, I was going for the lowest hanging fruit and the labels and music that I had the most attachment to because I thought it would make it easier for me to talk about it, which it did. And one of the labels that I ended up featuring in my early episodes, it might have been somewhere between episode 15 and 20, was Border Community. Border Community is a label that was founded in 2003 by James Holden and was a beloved label for basically anybody that was a fan of melodic ambient and melodic progressive house. James Holden made a name with that label, bringing in all different types of ambient and glitch producers at the time, and also by adding by bringing his own glitchy touch into what had previously, up to that point in his career, been mostly progressive house and progressive trance elements that really I don't think did have any glitch. I think 2003, when he did his A Break in the Clouds, was his first time fusing the experimentalism with his musical genius, and everybody knows how that turned out. A much loved track and loved record. What a great way to kick off the series. Now, if you want to hear my take on Breaking the Clouds, I'm going to give you in the little square at the end of the video a way to click back to my Border Community Part 1 episode. I'll also put a description down in the comments, and you can check out my thoughts on that. So, like I said, that was Border Community Part 1. I am going to break out into Parts 2 and 3. Today will be Part 2. Because I just realized with Border Community, I love the catalog so much. I absolutely love, I fully adore the cover art for it. And now that it's wintertime here, today is December 18th or 19th. There's something about approaching Christmas time and the childlike nostalgia of this time of the year, kind of being like tucked into my music room with, it's getting dark out a lot earlier now. There's something about that whole winter time approaching Christmas thing that makes me dig into my Border Community catalog and just start pulling out my favorite records and going through them. So I hope you guys enjoy this today. Also in the future, of course, stay tuned for Part 3. If you really love the label like me, I'm sure you'll get a kick out of all of them. It's just, there's so much talent on the label. There's so much incredible music. I will say that where the label's at now, they've pretty much lost me. I can't really justify buying anything new that came out, but I would say up to about roughly halfway through their catalog, everything from about halfway looking backwards, there's some serious gems in there. The label started out, I do think it was better in the beginning, but as are most things, if you think about something else creative like a television series, it's usually the first 3 seasons where all of the ideas are being fleshed out and there's a lot of creativity and a lot of uniqueness. And I think once you get into the territory of trying not to repeat yourself, maybe you lose some of the edge, and the label just sort of like branched out. The artists that were initially operating on it, they sort of vacated for whatever reason. Maybe they just stopped making music, and James tried to bring other artists in to replace them, and some of that childlike melodic nostalgia that I think is what drew everybody to it in the beginning started to disappear and just be replaced with other experimental sounds that aren't as pleasing on the ear. So when I look at the modern Border Community releases, they're like physically hard for me to listen to. It's not just that I don't like it, it's that in some cases they actually irritate or agitate my ear and my brain. And I'm like, that's not for me. I'm not saying that it's not for anybody, but it's not for me. Anyways, let's get into my 5 picks for today. I hope you guys really enjoy this. Let's start off with this one here. Petter 6 songs EP, absolute monster release. I saw 1,100 owners on Discogs as I was doing a little bit of homework this morning. And Petter launched his career in 2003, as far as I know, with his productions with his track "These Games." Anybody that was in love with melodic progressive house definitely knew I think I said "These Games," I meant "These Days." Sasha remixed it, which cemented its status as a progressive house classic. And in 2004, Petter came out with this double pack here. I saw, comments spanning the 2 decades that have passed since this was released, and people just saying that they absolutely love this record. I've always had a sweet spot for it. I think it showcases a lot of variety, and I don't know if this is an album or just a double pack, but assuming it was an album, the fact that Petter was able to pull from all different types of sounds and have each one come out like pure magic is just like, man, this guy was really in his prime. Now, he started producing in 2003, and I think he stopped around 2008. So he's just going to be another one of those producers that was extremely talented and I guess just kind of gave it up and went on to other things in life. But Petter, we salute you because these tracks are great. You have the track All Together here, which I'm going to review. Left Turned, which is kind of like glitchy and odd, as you would expect on Border Community. The B2 Deca Drive is, I would say, like clubby tech house, and just shows off something that would be a little bit more DJ friendly and accessible, something that a DJ would want to just drop in a set. And the other track that stands out to me, I mean, I love them all, is My Pretty Guitar. And that, I think, out of everything on here, My Pretty Guitar pulls the most at your heartstrings. It has that Border Community essence to it, that fundamental, just that ambient that you just cannot get enough of. The track that I'm going to review for you here today and give you a sample of is All Together. I'm always a sucker for strings. I always talk about that. And All Together, if you think back to the track that Brainbug did called Nightmare, which I believe came out in the late 90s, it has those sinister strings, like the very deep, ominous strings. And All Together isn't quite as ominous as that, but it sort of matches the darkness level of this artwork. Like it's definitely not uplifting. It's something like an 11 p.m. track that would just signify that it's about to go down. And I love that it's like 9-10 minutes long. A lot of the tracks on here are long, and it just gives you time to settle into them. And for somebody that's kind of lazy like me and doesn't want to get up and move the needle and flip records as much, it's just a godsend. I think most people would agree that Nathan Fake was the main cohort of James Holden when the label first launched, and Nathan dropped his Drowning in a Sea of Love double pack album, which I think most people would agree is one of the best things that Nathan's ever produced, and that Border Community, like if you just made a top 10 absolute must-have purchases for Border Community, I mean, you might find, if you did a popular vote, that Drowning in a Sea of Love would be in the top 3. There's a lot of reasons to love this album, and I was describing that childlike innocence that Border Community is known for. This is the absolute epitome of that. There's nothing aggressive on this album. It's just different variations of Nathan Fake playing with very joyful and playful melodies. When I look at this cover art, I think I'm more enamored with it than because I think because I live in America and the aesthetic of this is so foreign to me. Like, look at this like janky looking Volkswagen hatchback thing. I mean this almost looks like a fake train model set. Like, those like scale models that you would build a train, like have a train running through, like a model train. It kind of looks like that. And then to add in this like very odd but visually pleasing tapestry background, there's just something about this cover. I can sit here and look at it and just try to imagine what this space is and what it's trying to convey. I just absolutely love it. Moving on to the music, like I said, Nathan absolutely killed it with ambient tracks, and I decided to present to you the track "Stops" here as my choice because I do think it's the epitome of the sound of this album. It's almost upbeat. I didn't look at the tempo, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was around 130. It's kind of rushed, but also just absolutely charming. The melody is a xylophone, and one of the other elements that stands out to me is the gritty, glitchy sound. It sounds like a machine exhaling, like you could just hear that exhale of sound maybe run through some other glitchy processing that just sort of, I'm pretty sure it is an exhale sound and then have it being manipulated by whatever gizmos Nathan was producing with. It's just a weird, ultra creative way to bring a bunch of sounds together and at the same time create an emotion in your listener. So that was 2006 with Nathan Fake's Drowning in a Sea of Love album. Also in 2006, the release number 11 on Border Community's catalog that followed that up is one that has been a mainstay and one that I really love. I'm going to talk about the cover art again because this has got to be in my top 5 favorite cover arts of all time. Just look at the darkness of this. I love the deep green here, and if you look really close, there's some kind of vehicle that's out in the middle of this field. I don't know if that's a car, a tractor. What is this? I don't know if this is like completely fake or is this synthesized somehow from a photo and then made to look a little bit rougher. Classic Border Community windmill in the background with some kind of like the dark silhouette of crows flying in the background. Like, when you buy this record, there's nothing nice is happening when you listen to this. This is not trying to convey anything positive here. I love it for that though. And the producers here are Lazy Fat People, which had, I think, maybe 3 EPs, maybe 4. They had one on Planet E. They had one on Wagon Repair with Matthew Johnson's label. There might be one other too, but this is my favorite. This one's my favorite. Lazy Fat People is Mirko Loco, who is a producer, basically a minimal producer. He's appeared on Cadenza and Ripperton. Everybody knows Ripperton. Ripperton's a very talented tech house producer / ambient, and he really knows how to work with melodics. As a side note, I actually met Ripperton one time. He was opening for Mike Huckabee at this place called the Hudson Terrace in 2012 in Manhattan, and there was a rooftop party there. So when Ripperton finished his set and Mike was on, I was hanging out near the DJ booth trying to get track IDs from Mike Huckabee, and Ripperton was sitting there, and you could tell he's a quiet, reserved guy. And I'm also not sure if I'm sure that English isn't his first language, but I think with the combination of the language barrier and the fact that I was really fired up that night and he was just chilling, there was like a discrepancy in the conversation. So I realized after talking to him for 30 seconds, I should probably take it easy and tone it down and stop trying to like get responses from this guy over like really loud music that's blasting like that, 5 feet from our heads. But he was pleasant about it, and it was really nice to shake hands with him and meet him. Ripperton's gone on to do many, many releases. He puts out a lot more music than Mirko Loco, but I think they're both still active. Here they hit full stride, and consider that this is a 2006 release. 2006, you got a lot of like dirty rolling minimal, and I think this was their way of doing a border community facing minimal track that sounds like an '06 record. So the bass line is rolling and very '06. Some of the percussions are '06, and where it becomes border community is the dancing kind of tinny melody that rides in the background. That melody is very signature to me. When I hear that melody, I think immediately of border community. I think of early times where Doombot and I just met and we're hanging out and doing DJ sessions together. So a lot of magic and a lot of nostalgia in this record, and the fact that it's still cheap, I mean, go and pick it up, especially if you can get one that has nice, sharp, clean corners on it like this one. Highly, highly recommend. Now in 2003 or 4, the third release on Border Community was by Avus, and he did his track called Real. I have that record, and I like it a lot. One of the things about Avus is he's fundamentally a techno producer, but he makes some really weird stuff. If you look through his old catalog, you never know what you're going to find on some of those older tracks. And because he has a diverse sound, it's not somebody that you can buy blind. You got to make sure that it's the right kind of music for you. That was his first appearance. His second appearance was on the label was the one behind me, which is the Furry Hat release, and it also has that Spunker Spanker track, which is really hard and heavy, kind of like puts you out of your comfort zone for sure. I might talk about that one in a future episode. But for this episode, I wanted to go all the way up to 2010 with this release here. This is Avus's Poppy, and I don't know if it was due to budgetary constraints, but it came initially in a PVC sleeve. It was like janky. I want to say to anybody that's putting records out, first of all, we thank you for it because it's usually a labor of love. But please stop using PVC sleeves. Please stop doing that, because anybody that opens the record and catches a whiff of that PVC knows immediately, like, hey, if I leave this record in here, especially in a warm environment, that PVC is gonna like F up the surface of the vinyl. So it basically forces the buyer into immediately throwing out the sleeve and replacing it with something else, which is what I did. Now, this release here came, I was talking about possible budgetary constraints on the label as we got into 2010. You have to, for context here, 2010 vinyl was not popular. Vinyl was facing possible death in 2010. People were speculating that digital was going to take all of the vinyl market share, and once all the vinyl lovers died, that was going to be it. And they turned out to be they turned out to be wrong on that. But yeah, the record came. First of all, it's kind of a thin record. It's thinner than the other ones on the label, in my opinion. I can actually feel it flopping a little bit as I'm holding it here. It's not terribly thin. It's not the thinnest vinyl I've ever had, but it's up there. And instead of doing like a really cool cover art, like, can you imagine if this insert was an actual full-blown sleeve with the windmill and border community written on it? I think it would have represented the tracks on here better, right? It's almost like they sold the music short by also going with the skimpy packaging. But hey, I guess they had to do what they had to do to get the record released. My track on here, my choice is Avus's Poppy on the A1. I absolutely love this. If you've heard Avus's Real as the third border community release, you'll find that this is not even close. I don't even think this is close to Furry Hat or Spunker, whatever it's called. Poppy is in its own realm. Lots of beautiful synth work, and my favorite part that I captured in the sample here for you is when Poppy goes into its final, when it's releasing its final energy, there's an extra synth layer that comes in, and I think between the combination of the synth having a slow attack on it, and it almost sounds like the synth is slightly delayed or improvised or played as if it was played live and not perfectly quantized to the beats. Like, it's on time, but kind of like a little bit late. And the lateness of it, for some reason, I actually appreciate that. It's like a late arriving key hit. And the fact that the hits kind of like stretch out and draw out, there's just something about that. It's just like, oh, that feels really good. So props to Avus for that. I think that might have been his final release on Border Community. And I haven't seen any records from him since, but cool guy, and some really cool music. And my fifth and final pick for you today is one that was recommended to me by somebody on my channel. I really do read your guys' comments and try to go and investigate what you recommend. So in my James Holden Top Remixes episode, somebody commented that I should check out James Holden's remix of Kate Wax, Echoes and Light. And I somehow I missed it. I don't know if it's because at this point in 2011, there's no cover art for this, so maybe when I saw the release, I wasn't as enthused to listen to it. You can see on the label here, there's Border Community written down here, but this lacks the magic of the other Border Community releases because it doesn't have the cover art. So it not saying that the music lacks, but as a holistic experience, the fact that they skimped on the cover art, like kind of like keeps it from being like the best it could be, in my opinion. So Kate Wax did an album on Border Community called Dust and Wax or something like that. Either way, it was an album that, if you think of that artist Fever Ray that was really like popular in 2009, it kind of has that same dark drab vocalist style to it. I was looking at the original album, and in the descriptors, one of the describing genres is EBM, and If you asked me 2 weeks ago what EBM was, I would have said, are you sure you don't mean EDM, like dance music? And I was hanging out with Tim Humphrey, the curator of the Rediscovery label, just this past week, and we were having lunch together, and he casually threw out this term, like EBM used to be, and I said, Tim, what are you talking about? I've been a fan of dance music for a long time. I've never heard of EBM, so he was basically schooling me. And when we went back to his place, he was playing some records for me to give me examples of what EBM is. And when I heard it, I'm like, okay, so this is 90s and late 80s, like almost like Depeche Mode type industrial synth, very geary drum machine sounding type music with kind of like wacky degenerate vocals over it. So I'm like, I'm definitely down with that. So once I heard what the style was, I was actually appreciating it. And I just never heard the term EBM before. So what you have here is the James Holden remixing the track Echoes and Light, which has the fundamentally some of the EBM roots. Like when Echoes and Light, when this remix gets towards the end, one of the drums that hits is like a very classic 1990 sounding drum. The kick is pretty heavy, and the BPM for this is somewhere in that like ambiguous 113 to 116 range, if I had to guess. Holden, never really being confined to one style, is capable of remixing anything because the guy's just a goddamn genius. And here you can just see that he took like a shorter record and basically just brought his knowledge of musical arrangement and production and turned that original track into something that I think is still one of the best things in their catalog, although somewhat probably the most overlooked. All right, thank you for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed these 5 border community picks. As promised, in the future, maybe a year from now, I'll come back and do the 3rd part in the 3-part series. I'll have 5 more picks for you then. And by that point, I'll probably be through all of the border community releases that I love. Unless they somehow revert their sound back to their traditional ways, if it stays in the glitch, that's probably it for me. But I'm so thankful for the first half of that catalog, like I said. Thank you, James, Nathan, and to anybody else that's helping assist with that label and helped get these releases out there. They are some of the most magical records I've ever held, and I love them. Thank you so much, and take care.